Loving and leading educators. It's a real calling. It's not easy, but boy, does it make a difference in the lives of so many people. Loving and leading educators. That's our topic on this episode of the Educators Among Us podcast.
Welcome to the Educators Among Us podcast, where we share motivational messages and inspiring stories for and about educators. Your host, Scott Barron, is author of the critically acclaimed book, Love 'Em and Lead 'Em, and provides powerful insights and wisdom for those who heed the call to teach, coach, lead, and serve at all levels of education.
This is Scott Barron, and I'm very, very honored to be able to have a conversation with Nathan Wagner. Nathan is a great friend and colleague who leads Westbury Christian School down in Houston, Texas. And of course, the privilege of our work here on this podcast is we get to share stories of educators who they care, they care enough to want to really take that authentic journey of excellence. And they're not just kind of talking about it. As I saw some posts this week where, our school's always been excellent, but now we're even more excellent. And it's like, well, okay, self-proclamation doesn't necessarily make it true, but it is something that we strive for. And it's a constant striving, just like the pursuit of wisdom. The pursuit of excellence is a never-ending journey. And so I'm very thankful for what Nathan does there. And so I want to just share with you a little bit about his story as an educator, as a leader, and be able just to get to know him some, because he's just a great guy. And I think you're going to enjoy getting to know him some. So Nathan, thank you for being here and being a part of the conversation.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for it, and always love our conversations and just getting to swap stories and sometimes just share stories. And I don't know what else happens, but sometimes it just feels good to share a story, right? And learn a lot just processing it, I guess. Yeah.
That's right. And that's the joy of what we get to do together, and just coaching and working together on the strategies of growth for Westbury, of course. But we like to start off, Nathan, with you kind of introducing a bit of yourself, of who's an educator who has most impacted your life, and why?
I love that question, because it kind of reminds me in the book of Hebrews, where it talks about being surrounded by a great crowd of witnesses. And when you ask that question, who's a great educator, I think of one, and I'm going to share about one, but then I start thinking about all these other ones, and just the way that you look back and you're so shaped by that. But if I had to pick one off the top of my head, I was going to say Michael Kantz. He was my middle school English teacher, and he was my high school soccer coach. And I think so I spent a lot of time with him. I spent a lot of time him having me run and do hard things. And there's that desire that you wanted him to know that you were giving your best. And I think in that challenging middle school time, where there's so much uncertainty, and so many middle schoolers, myself certainly, was trying to figure out who I was going to be. Did I like who I was? Did I love it on a daily basis? And just to have somebody that definitely saw me. And I grew up in a public school. It wasn't like we were having biblical conversations or anything like that in school, but he saw me, he knew me, he valued me, and I will never forget. And I spent 5 years with him because of the coaching thing. And so really got to know him, but I'll never forget, somewhere, I think after my freshman year, which I'm not even sure how I made the team, we probably just short on numbers. But I tried to work hard. And I remember him telling me something at the end of the season, like, hey, you're at the crux, you're in the crucible. And I didn't know what those words meant, but as an English teacher, he told me to go look up those words, and just to realize that that's this refining point, a turning point. I was going to have to make a decision. Did I want to be serious about this, or did I want to go do something else? And kind of responded to that, and just that relationship, just over time. I don't go back home. I don't have any family back home anymore, so it's not like I see him often. But it was a huge influence in my life. Really, I'd go back and visit in college, but just had a big impact. And I think it really goes back to he took the time to know me, and I felt known by him. And he probably knew everybody, but I felt known. And I think that can be so transformative especially as you're a young person trying to grow up and figure out who you are. But that was one, definitely in those early years, that meant a lot to me. And I grew up and I became an English teacher, and I became a soccer coach initially. So probably that influence even greater than I appreciated at the time too. But definitely somebody that respected.
Kind of threw down the gauntlet for you. right?
Yeah. And so
Another good word with crucible.
yeah. And so it just meant a lot, and feeling accomplished at the end, that I did grow in that and I got better. But just he stood by me, and he was loyal to me, I guess, and supported me and was there. And so that just meant a lot.
That was about the age you were when you decided you wanted to be a school administrator.
Yeah, absolutely right. No, that's an own funny story. I mean, that I probably tried to resist for a long time, being an educator, um, but yeah, but you're influenced by people, and that's, it's the great part about what we do.
For sure. So, as you have been leading there at Westbury now, one of the things I think you guys have landed on is the idea of being faithful, wise, and diverse, and specifically kind of really a diversity like the kingdom, right? But what does that look like? Let's say on a Tuesday there at the school there in Houston, what does that experience actually look like?
Diversity for us, we could really measure a lot of different ways, and we're going to be diverse. And that's something that has always kind of made us unique in the private school landscape around our area. It is kind of a defining characteristic, and for a long time, it is what it was, and that's just kind of who we are. But we realized that some of the processes we went through about what we were going to have kind of define us, and what that story was going to be, and what that narrative was going to be. Faithful, wise, diverse kind of came out of that. And so it went from like, this is a quality about who our school is, to like, okay, what if we were intentional about that, and we really wanted to like own that. And so that's kind of how it ended up as one of those three things. Because we're racially diverse, we're ethnically diverse, we're socioeconomically diverse for a private school. We have about 350 students. I think they represent somewhere around 100 to 120 different congregations, from a wide range of denominations. We have families that are just starting to explore what faith is. We have students that come from countries overseas, where the Christian faith isn't something beyond just a textbook that they studied in their world history classes. And so, we have this huge expanse, and what we think is so beautiful about that is in Revelation, right? That's what we see at the end of the day. Every knee will bow before the throne of God. And so we get some opportunity to kind of build that here. So when you walk your halls, or walk our halls, I don't think you see maybe a student body that looks like a lot of private schools. We are really diverse. And so trying to figure out and grow into then, okay, so how do all those backgrounds come together, and how do all those unique experiences come together, where we can learn and we can grow together in that. And so, we celebrate that diversity. We try to incorporate new voices that maybe you don't always have. And so it's kind of I would say it's a descriptive term, but it's also an aspirational one. I think it's one that we would all say we want to get better at and grow at. But when you put it as one of the three, you can't choose to not do it, if that makes sense. So there's kind of a little bit of accountability in that too, that we want to continue to do more in this area and continue to grow and celebrate that, because I think every student wants to be in a setting where they feel like they're welcomed and invited, and they can look around and they have role models and they have peers, and they feel comfortable in that setting because they see people like them. They see people from similar shared backgrounds and experiences, and then we can all learn from one another in that. So it's easy to talk about, and you can go, read a website or whatever, and you might be under the impression that we have it perfectly, but we don't, because that's diversity also means diversity of thought and diversity of experiences, which means now you're taking different perspectives and you're bringing it together, and that oftentimes results in challenging conversations or conflict or very different opinions and perspectives. And so part of the beautiful struggle, I guess, is how you work through that and walk through that. But I would say that's something we continue to grow into, not something that can't check that box and say, oh yeah, we arrived, everybody learned from us or something. But it's a journey that I think we're willing to take and understand the value of it and its importance. And so, that's
one of the things that I enjoy about our work together is that you have an authenticity about you, right? You don't have sort of this kind of pretend things that you throw up. You're not you're honest, and there's a sort of a freshness about that I really do love about you, that allows us to have frank conversations. There's a candor that comes with that, and I think you bring that to the whole job. And so that's a real strength of yours that I wish more school administrators would be willing to be, because it takes a vulnerability with that, right? I mean, so being willing to drop their guard, and sometimes just being willing to say, hey, I need help, or hey, I need to talk through this, whatever. I really do admire that about you, and I think you've been able to use that in a very productive way. Versus sometimes there are some people who can be overly sort of vulnerable in things, and be too far in that direction. I think you find a good balance in that, because it's a hard job. I mean, being a head of school, it's something that I think a lot of people underestimate. And along that line, what would you say is the hardest part of the job?
I think the challenge is that I think a lot of times there's like this dual nature to things. Like some of the things that make it the best part of the job are what make it the most challenging as well at times. My favorite part is how you get to work with, all sorts of people. And so you're working with, and to some degree, very, very less than when I was in a classroom, but you're working with students, you're working with teachers, you're working with other administrators, you're working with families and parents. And so you're getting to know more and more people, you're getting to hear more and more stories, you're getting to see how more and more puzzle pieces fit together. I love that complexity. That's also the challenge, though, is that sometimes you have these really, you have to navigate really hard conversations, or you have to make decisions that will impact families or teachers in a way that they weren't anticipating. And you can, and you certainly learn through this, but you can manage that change as best as you want, and I've still got areas to grow there, but uh, it's still change, and it's still different, and it still has an impact, right? And so I think I wouldn't say there's anything like I hate about the job or like is my least favorite thing, but there's definitely that weight of like, hey, your decisions are consequential and they impact people, and that's just a weight. And so it's a weight you accept. Like I can go get another job or whatever, but there's a responsibility there there's a gravity to that. And so there are nights you don't sleep much at all, and there are um gray hairs that you pick up, and there are those things that you have to think about, you have to pray about, you have to consult others about, and try to figure out. But there's a weightiness to it sometimes. Tons of fun days and lots of fun, joyful things, but there's a weightiness of the responsibility that some days you wake up and you think, wow, I could go get another job, right? Like I could go do something different, and maybe I would not experience the weight to the same degree that I do. But man, the impact that you get to have, and the way you get to see kids and adults growing through what they're learning and doing is still worth the trade, I guess. Yeah, I love it.
Hmm. So in that process, what was there a certain sort of part of your either leadership skills or your even personality that you kind of had to confront, that you
Yeah.
had to kind of get honest about?
Yeah, so like I don't wake up loving conflict. And I don't say, wow, I can't wait to have a really hard conversation with somebody. And I think that, like I would say daily, that's a struggle. And I don't think I want to get to the point where like I'm callous to that either, because I think that you could be a wrecking ball in some way if you love that. But I do think, when I really have to sit in that and think about why is this such a struggle, a lot of times it probably is selfish reasons. I don't want to feel uncomfortable. I don't want to experience that. And so some of it is shifting through like, okay, actually, usually they're in a worse situation than I am when those things have to happen, right? Like I'm confronting them about something a lot of times. And so trying to realize like, okay, this isn't about me. This is about helping somebody else improve. And it would be wrong to not let them improve and have that opportunity. So um, that's just a comfort with discomfort, I guess, that you have to grow into. And then it's funny, we started in service on Monday. And so, one of the things I was sharing with our staff, and I said, growing up, like I was not a literature major, I was an English major. I love the writing piece of it and the research and that. And so, I've been told, I feel like I communicate pretty well when I can plan and be purposeful about that. That whole, like that idea that good leadership is repetitive messaging of simple messages, right? Like, I'm like, why? I said it so well the first time. I shouldn't have to say it over and over again, right? And so realizing that that's not true, and that you need your, your core things that you're going to repeat and that you're going to stand on and going to be your hallmarks. And so I jokingly said, it's my hope that in a year or two, like, anybody on the faculty could give that keynote speech at the beginning of the year, because they know what it's coming if they've been here. It's repetitive in that nature, and it's something that we repeat over and over throughout the year. That's just more of a communication comfort thing, that I've really had to learn to grow into, is keep it simple and repeat it. And that's different. So you don't think about things like that. Like when you sign up for the job, you think, oh yeah, they must have loved me because I communicated so well. But here's what I'm actually going to have to do.
Uh, I know when I went into school leadership, I just assumed it's just a school. I mean, come on, right? And then realized, oh, wait a minute, this is a whole different level of ecosystem and trust, and even, I would say, even skepticism. And I know we all bump into that as school leaders, sometimes from our board, sometimes from our our colleagues, from parents, from students. Right? There's a kind of pushing back against, but wait, I mean, don't assume the worst here, right? I mean, let's figure this out together. We're in this together, right? And
Yeah.
sort of continuing to call people back to that and getting past sort of assuming the worst is, I think, one of the bigger challenges.
Yeah, it's fascinating how, this is probably just our broken human nature here, but, we're so quick to create an us versus them. And, we talked about that earlier in the week, but, there's this tendency, we're going to say parents are over there and schools over here, even though everything we publish is about a partnership. And so really that challenge of like, hey, we're actually all on the same page, trying to do the same thing, working for the benefits of the same young people here. And so, yeah, there's constantly that callback to that united effort, that togetherness, that humility involved in that as well, for sure.
Oh, sure. So from we've obviously been working together now for 3 or 4 years, and uh, doing a lot of work. You guys are part of the School Growth Network. We've been doing marketing, programming, and strategic planning and other things together. What would you say first is different about you from our work together, and then what's different about the school?
So, I think the school, one of the biggest changes that we've really walked alongside with you all on and really thought through is just, who are we? And, the timing, like our history and working with you, right? Like that kind of came out of COVID, and COVID, it seems like it helped some private schools in the enrollment sense. Others, it kind of had a negative impact on. For us, it was a drastic impact on our enrollment dropping. And so it kind of forced an accelerated crisis moment, in a sense of like, okay, who are we and who do we want to be? And so we really drilling down on what those core values are, what that narrative was, what made us distinct as a school. And so a lot more clarity around that and growth in those areas. And then what does that mean for when you hire? What does that mean for when you evaluate? What does that mean for where you look for your talent? And so that just the growth in that area, because it's changing your whole system and your whole ecosystem and your whole set of processes. It's not just like, great, we came up with 5 great adjectives that describe us, and we'll put those on the wall. We'll make some cool graphics to go with those. But you start there, yeah, but then you realize like, oh, this has to go deeper and deeper, and you don't, right? You realize this is an issue, we've been working through and growing through. Is like, okay, we focused a lot on that for 3 years, and then we felt like it was good, so we kind of drifted. Can't drift, you got to go back to it. And so the disciplines around who you're going to be and what you want to be are really key. So that's an area as a school that we've grown a lot. And then the schools are like aircraft carriers, or a lot of organizations are like aircraft carriers. Like to change that direction of momentum takes a huge amount of effort and some time as well. And so starting to see the growth there. I think myself as a leader, there's and just working, with you and working through school growth and working with the things that we're implementing here. I think and you use the phrase, and I know you've got the book, but you got love them and lead them. And I think what that really means to love the people that you lead, usually, like, when Jesus asked Peter, do you really love me? Like, yeah, I can answer that question. Yes. And then like you ask again, you're like, yeah, for real, stop asking. Right. And then, but like the more you ask, the more you start to think like, okay, but like, what does that mean? And what does that like, what does that require of me to think differently or to do differently? And so, yes, I love everybody, like Jesus says, but what does that actually mean to love them? So I think I continue to grow in that, but if I had to pick one thing, that'd be it. Mine is the other things I talked about, communicating and sticking tight to
Sure. No,
things
I
like
love
that.
that though, right? Because I mean that is a significant challenge of leadership is to love the people that we're responsible for
Mhm.
shepherding and guiding and one of the things that we've been working on recently has been putting more definition to that term leadership, because love them and lead them is a term that we've used for at least, I don't know, 5 or 6 years now. And
Yeah.
loving educators is a specific calling, because sometimes it can get hard,
Yeah.
dealing with some of the natural skepticism that comes with those who are educated, and then to guide them through all the seasons of the year that come up with the inevitable conflict and the other pieces that are just part of school life.
Yeah.
I think it's been an interesting endeavor to explore that idea of how do we do that? How do we create an environment not only for students to thrive, but for educators to thrive? I mean,
Mhm.
why can't the school be a great place for those who are called to teach and to coach and to do the finances and to be guidance counselors and librarians and all their, why can't it be good for them too?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
that's a different level of leadership.
Yeah. We talk about, kind of our, with our big, hairy, audacious goal, or that grand vision, is that we want to be a place for flourishing through Christian education, and we want to be the best at that. And a lot of times we think about that in a student sense, and we talked a lot about that this week about what that means for students. But that we also want that to be true for our employees, also that they feel like they are flourishing. And when you look at that definition, talks about, right, healthy growth, vigorous growth, especially because of a particularly favorable environment. And so how do you craft an environment to allow that growth to happen? Because there are a lot of things you can't control, just like with students. There's a lot of things with adults you can't control. But we sit here and we think, okay, like what do you do to elevate that experience, and what do you do to make it a little bit better? And there's so much research that's been done on human flourishing, and I think one thing that we do pretty well here, I think, is the relationships, and trying to create structures that help those relationships between even faculty members and employees kind of grow and develop, so that they feel like they're in a very supportive environment, whether that's just um, their peer colleagues, or whether that's their administrators as well. Try to be supportive of that. I think one thing I'm really excited about this year, but like kind of got a very tight theme, and I've got kind of administratively, like, everybody's on board with the theme, and so they've got a pretty tight theme right now, which is working really, really well, because I think clarity is so important for that experience for educators, that they like, they're all gifted and they're skilled and they're professionals and they bring this expertise, but what they just want to know, so what are we doing with all this, right? We've brought all this talent together, so what beyond just what I'm doing? So a lot just to kind of bring some clarity and direction there, I think, helps educators. And so we're on our end, kind of what we're looking at this year, we're excited about that. And then there's the other metrics you're trying to grow in as well, the financial pieces and things to better support. But
Sometimes
share
it could be
experience.
hard to create what you just talked about, though. There, sort of that commitment. Well, one is a shared vision, and then a commitment to align around that vision. What steps have you taken to make that true this year?
Yeah, so like I would say, and one thing I've tried to do a better job communicating that repeatedly to, even like with the leadership team that we've worked on, and kind of doing a better job of clarifying and defining what that means for me, what I mean when I say those words, because we all have meanings that we attach to words, and they can all be in the same general direction, but maybe it wasn't the actual direction. And so how you kind of tighten that focus, and then we just like the spirit of collaboration that's been involved with that. I saw, like, they've been shooting me as we got ready for this big launch this week. They've been, shooting me slides, and just see how tight the slides are with the theme, and how there's a callback to the theme and a callback to the vision, and the goals that we worked on throughout the summer to kind of get ready for this. They kind of stack, and And we started out, we kind of did that independently, but then as we shared those, it was cool to see how that actually all aligned. And so there's just a lot of, for us, I'd say spirit directed synergy around that. And so I'm excited because when you can get unity around not just that big, huge goal, but like what those priorities are going to be in a school year, that eliminates a lot of the challenges, right? It's a whole lot easier to keep moving in the same motion than it is to change directions or to constantly nudge back and forth. So that's been promising. I'll still got to deliver on it, but the promise and the start and the initial impact, how you start a race, is so important. So I think that's really key. But so I'd say there's been a lot more intentional, repetitive, simplified kind of communication around that.
Mm-hmm. And disciplined as well.
Discipline, yeah.
And the other thing that I think you have done a really intentional job with is hiring thought partners. People who on the team that you can actually we're not just executing tasks, because we can always stay busy on tasks. The tyranny of the urgent of the school year and the pace of the school year, nonstop things to do, right? But being able to, and I think this is going to be really important in this next few years, and particularly this coming season of school leadership, is we're going to have to think deeply about things. I mean, there's a whole new set of opportunities and variables that we get to really kind of are in play now. We get to consider that before we probably assumed what that would look like, whether it's in private ed or public ed, whatever. There's a lot of things that just kind of are built into running a school that now not so much. And I mean, now we get to really rethink the way schools are structured and designed. And so, having thought partners on your team now opens up a set of doors for you to innovate and to solve at a level of, of problems that I think it creates a whole new pathway for Westbury. I think you've done a really good job of putting people on the team who can think at that level like a mastermind.
Yeah, I think, I was talking to somebody that was a new head of school the other day, a couple of weeks ago. Got breakfast together and then brand new. They'd never done it anywhere else, just brand new, kind of going from the classroom to the headship. And so there's a little, that reality sinks in, like, okay, what am I doing? And, one of the things I told them was, at least for me, one of the things I learned, right, like you kind of got to accept that there's a lot you don't know, which is challenging because usually in education we promote people because of what they know and the things that they've done, accomplishments, yeah. And then you get to a point where you literally can't know everything because now you're dealing with divisions that you were never in before, or areas that you never had any responsibility for, like technology, for example, or something. And so now you're having to depend on others, but you have to accept that if you think you know it all, you don't. And so I think that value of a mastermind and that idea that, okay, if you can get a lot of people that have expertise and they have that spirit of humble perspective, I think there's got to be humility there too, because sometimes you can have very insightful people with new perspectives, and then if you don't do it their way, they pal and there's conflict around that. But I think you want, like you said, that tension. Otherwise, like my biggest fear is always like emperor's new clothes, right? Like you're going around doing something and nobody's telling you that it's a bad idea, even though they knew it was a bad idea, right? And so you've got to foster that, and you've like that requires relationships. And so I'm super excited about somebody we've hired to be our director of learning. That's going to work well because there was a prior relationship there. There's somebody that had worked with us before and left, somebody that was well respected as far as just her teaching abilities and just with faculty well respected. And so to bring her on, that relationship's already there. So that's a helpful thing, I think, because now you can enter with a little bit of vulnerability. You enter those meetings with trust. And so the tension that you want, the good tension, is there because trust is there. I think it's hard at times when somebody brand new comes into an organization and they might have that spirit and they might have that perspective that you need, but because the trust isn't there, you really have to, then it requires your current team to be pretty humble about, hey, this is what we asked them to do. We can't, push back hard, and we got to welcome that and embrace that. And so there's so much like just team dynamics that are a part of leadership, I think. And that can, as a leader, that probably ends up taking you a lot of time. Somebody asked me, the guy I met with the other day asked me, last night he was texting me about meetings, like how often and with who and all that. And so kind of laying it out there, and productive ones. I try really hard not to have pointless meetings, but you realize a lot of your time is spent with people, helping them with their problems, right? And the challenges that they're facing, or encouraging them in what they're doing. And so, after I sent that, he didn't respond. So I don't know if he was overwhelmed by that answer or what, but there's a lot of time with people, because you're trying to, as a leader, you're trying to coach up people in some way and keep them, like I said, aligned and tight. But if you
And that's what's different
don't
about
have
our
that, yeah,
process has been, what we proposed as part of the school growth methodology is that, hey, our product is actually not our students.
yeah,
It's our people. And so you're
yeah,
right. Being willing to invest that time to actually be generous with our time. Because if you're going to love educators, you have to spend time with them. You have to engage and understand where they are and what do they want to talk about
yeah,
themselves, right?
yep.
That's
Get to know
human
them.
nature,
Yeah,
but particularly particular educators. So, well, you can tell in our audience, you can tell why I love working with Nathan so much, because he's a very talented leader who has a great heart and loves educators, loves kids, and is trying to really create an authentic program of excellence there at Westbury. So Nathan, thank you for joining us for
yeah.
this conversation. Just really love you and appreciate all that you're doing and the ability to be a part of your journey together. We love being able to help schools figure that out, to find that journey. We call it the journey of excellence. We know that excellence, of course, is not just meeting standards. That's called accreditation.
Mhm.
The authentication is, hey, we're actually we're setting a new standard. We're defining what's possible, and
Yeah.
that's a whole new level of excellence. And I know that Nathan is committed to that, and many other schools are as a part of the School Growth Network. But Nathan, again, thank you for your courage and your perseverance as a leader of educators, because you're a blessing to a lot of people, and we're just grateful for your commitment to the work.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks so much for the opportunity to have a conversation. And we love working with you as well, and just that relationship and friendship too. So thank you.
So as you can see, the calling to love and lead educators, boy, what a privilege it is, because we get to change lives and we get to be a blessing to so many people, both here as well as in eternity. Love them and lead them, my friend. This is Scott.
Thank you for joining us for the Educators Among Us podcast and for your courageous commitment to this noble calling. We get you and the challenges of this work. To stay connected with this community, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and weekly encouragement at educatorsamongus.com.